Okay, so today I want to share some reflections on this thing that we call cancel culture, which is such a disease that's been permeating throughout the collective and throughout our lives so much for the past 5 years or something now. And there's a few different sides to it. And I feel like it's the one side that we see most obviously. There is also an opposite side to it, and then there's another aspect to it as well that needs to be considered. But obviously, the first side that I think most of us see when it comes to cancel culture is this idea and action that if somebody doesn't think the same way as you, then cancel them. Just remove them from your lives, you know. And it sounds absolutely ridiculous, really, when you put it like that. If somebody doesn't think the same as you, and if you think that, obviously there's more to it, if you think that what they are saying and their beliefs are really unfounded and I guess in a way detrimental and unhelpful for a specific group of people, then that's when it comes in and you think no, or that their views are not virtuous and they don't hold any sense of love or compassion, then the whole concept is okay, done, you're out of my life, you know. And obviously it's interesting here now that I said a sense of compassion, because the mere fact of cancelling someone shows that you do not hold a sense of compassion and understanding in yourself in the first place. So ultimately, I feel like the big thing here is that we have to question this theme that is running throughout society and the implications of it in our own lives individually, and how much are we running around with these concepts without analyzing and recognizing, taking responsibility and seeing where we come from ourselves. And so yeah, it's such an interesting thing to do, to just say, you know what, your beliefs are totally rude and bounded and I don't want to talk to you anymore. That's one side of it. And then I feel like there's another side of it as well, which is almost the opposite, because that's the most obvious one. But then another way of doing it is when you realize what's happening in the world and you have a lot of insights and you can see a lot further than some people, and you know of all the corruption and the manipulation as well. Sometimes when you hold that information, you can also still be going around and cancelling people. And obviously there's levels and depths to it, but in a way you can literally be going around saying, you know, you shouldn't be thinking that, you shouldn't be believing that, like, don't you know what's happening in the world, you know? And ultimately any level of control in trying to restrict someone's thoughts, someone's thinking, it's the same. It's the same side of the coin. It's the same as just cancelling, you know what I mean? So that side is a bit more hidden, but it definitely happens as well. I've seen it happen a lot. And obviously, ultimately, this video is a reflection here to invite you into a deeper contemplation of how it is being affected in your own life individually, because ultimately the grand and the wider themes that have taken place in society, they're going to take place, let them, you know. But we can make and create changes in our lives individually. So when we can start to reflect internally and see how we are perpetuating these diseases, you know, it's such a disease, honestly. So and it's such a crazy concept to just think, you know what, I really disagree with what you're saying and I don't want to speak to you ever again. And we all saw so much of this since 2020. It's been heightened. Obviously, a lot of us know that divide and conquer is the strategy used by the people with authority, with authority, because obviously we all have our own divine authority, so we all know that there's a strategy, and it's divide and conquer, and they've used it for years and for centuries, right? And then it's really beginning to be able to see how it's being used and how we are being played by them, by these strategies, So this divide and conquer is obviously such a huge one. And throughout the past few years, we've been through such a roller coaster of emotions, of, pulling at our root chakra, security and safety on so many different levels of manipulation, it's actually been really disgusting. So yeah, at the same time, there is this inner reflection that takes place when we start to be able to see the strategies being played. And what I think is so important for us individually, because I always say that we have to take individual self-responsibility now moving forwards. It's not about relying on all these things outside of you to tell you how to live your life. Plus, as so many of us know, this is the part where everything changes. This is the part where the whole consciousness shifts and the old systems crumble. And there's also a funny thing where people keep saying, and this is a form of cancel culture as well, it is not the old systems are dying, it's because that we can see the darkness even more, or something like that. I'm sure some people have seen these memes floating around, and I just find it really interesting when people start in their communication with something like, it is not, or it's not the case, or don't believe, or with these things that are really, obviously, in a way, it's got this emphasis that's really striking, and it draws people in. But at the same time, there is a way of communicating where we don't have to cancel other people's ideologies. And ultimately, again, it always comes down to communication. And this is just one of the most important things moving forwards, is communication. Real, honest, raw, authentic communication from the heart center. If we can get into these debates, again, I'm sure so many people have been getting into debates, and if you are aware of this kind of heart-centered conversation, then it's your responsibility to invite that into the interaction, into the relationship, into the engagement that you're having with this other person. Some people will not realize that they're communicating just from this point of mind, and because of that, it only ends up in this rat race and this thinking and this overthinking kind of place, and this represent the argument and then disagree, and all these themes are really intertied together with this whole cancel culture, because it's founded upon this concept of black and white and right and wrong. And really, moving forwards, we're moving past that. We're moving forwards. We're moving into an expansion of ideologies, plural, and into an expansion of growth and evolution, obviously. And this kind of metaphor came up for me the other day, and I posted about it on my account, and it's almost like sometimes you can be in one room of the house, and then you think that room is everything. I guess it's like Plato's allegory of the cave, right? So you think that room is everything, and then you refine within these walls, you don't want to push yourself past this box that you're in. And then sooner or later, you open the door, you see there's a whole corridor, right? So now it's up to you. Are you too afraid to explore those other corridors? Do you want to go into those corridors? Do you want to go into those other rooms even? And then after that, you see that there are infinite levels. There's not just one floor, So when you think about it like that, there is, and then you realize the house isn't even a house. It's just infinite, And so basically, it's this recognition that sometimes we can only be seeing one point of view and one perspective because we're only in that one room. And somebody else may have traveled into a few different other rooms, or they may just be in another room and they've got a different perspective, you know? And again, the thing that comes up is compassion and understanding, because if you want to cancel someone because you don't agree with their perspective, and okay, yeah, let's say their perspective is like borderline not a vibe, you know, or you know, it's racist or whatever their perspective is, whatever label we want to give their perspective, you know. Yeah, it could be the case that it is that, right? And still at the same time, there's a level of understanding that we can go through. We can still listen and we can still understand, you know. And sometimes I feel like there will be a case where if someone's point of views are so far beyond ours and we feel like we are in the, you know, the right path. And again, this right and wrong thing, you know, it doesn't really exist, but what I mean is the path of virtuosity, you know, we may believe that. Listen, the other thing is sometimes we are not, and we don't even realize it. And right now in this world, lots of things are twisted so much, as we've seen already. Politics is completely turned around and inside out, and what we left and right, what do they even mean anymore? It's completely losing the essence of what it even is or what it was right now anymore. So there's definitely a level where we can understand, you know, and just because you understand it doesn't mean you have to agree. So there's an intelligence of conversation that can take place when you can listen to somebody's perspective, not have to get into an argument with it, you know. Yeah, you can present your views. When I say argument, I kind of mean just like that whole mental over analysis, and also this kind of obsessive nature of, or wanting to dominate this conversation or win the argument. You know, all of that is completely rooted in this black and white thinking, and it's the old paradigm, and it's this, it goes really deep. This is why doing the inner work is always so important, because you will start to see it reflected in you, and everything starts from you. But as you begin to do the work, you will start to realize what's going on, and you start to open and see all these other doors. And yeah, the black and white thinking is what we're moving past. So again, the invitation is for you to recognize and see that in your own actions and in your own life and in your conversations. But there is an intelligence of conversations where we can just listen to the other person, and then just because we are listening to them and we're not cancelling them, it doesn't mean that we agree. And it's such an amazing thing to be able to hear someone, even if you don't agree with them, even if you think you're right and you don't agree with them, then, and to be able to just honor the relationship and the connection still and move forwards. And now again, this is that divide and conquer strategy, because if we have opposing ideologies, you know, this divide and conquer wants us to crack, to break, to be separated. And this is the intelligence of that strategy, is that it does do that. It has that effect on so many people. Again, that's why it's our individual responsibility. Can we invite other people into a more heartfelt conversation? Hey, listen, I hear you and I know what you're saying, but I would really appreciate it if we don't have to shout at each other when we're communicating. I would really appreciate it if you can stop interrupting me when we're talking. I feel like you keep interrupting me here, and you know, it's making me feel like you're not listening to me. You know, I feel this level of communication it's a whole different level of education that is needed in our world and in society, because it's like we've been completely blind, and we don't know that there's this language that exists that is coming from the heart space. Ultimately, that's it. Again, once you do the work, you open the door and you start to begin to realize, you know, So this whole cancel culture is a perfect design of how separation works, you know? And it's an old-fashioned belief that if someone holds an opposing ideology of yours, that you have to delete them from your life, literally. That you have to delete them from your life. And F. Scott Fitzgerald has this quote that I love, and obviously paraphrasing here, but something along the lines of, to be truly intelligent is to hold two opposing views in your mind at the same time. So this is the metaphor of the doors, being able to be in two of the rooms at once. Basically, are you in one room, or can you be in two? Can you be in three? Can you be in five? You know, 6, 7. You know, how many rooms are you abiding in? You know? And that's really it. And again, this comes to this whole concept of moving away from black and white and binary and duality. There's so much talk on duality. Again, another mental construct that I find is so often led to these conversations that's just a rat race and a cycle that just goes over and over. So I'm not going to talk too much on that, but where we are moving towards, again, for those of us who are feeling it deep inside and who know that we are going through a huge transformation here collectively, because honestly, it's not going to be everyone. So this transformation, yes, moving away from that dualistic thinking, and it's in the thinking, being able to open and embrace other perspectives. And so moving forwards, what we are doing is moving into a multidimensionality where the truth is different depending on the amount of rooms, the amount of doors, the amount of floors, the amount of layers, the amount of levels that you have entered into. So there's no fear, there's no need to be afraid to step into your expansion and into your growth, you know, because that's what's happening, that's what's taking place right now. It's not a place to get stuck in, it's a place to grow, to change, and to shift, all constantly in flux. And so the multidimensionality is a way of thinking, and it will really basically break down those barriers of separation and cancel culture. And again, in the communication, be able to speak to one another. Yeah, but I am sure there will be cases where, you know, someone's ideologies are so far beyond being virtuous that you don't even want to be friends with them, which is fine as well. That does make sense. It for sure will happen like that sometimes. But even still within that, this is what I was going to say, you can still call in unity and come back to this oneness where you can understand their perspectives, because ultimately what's happened here on this planet is that we're all born into ignorance and into indoctrination. So from that space, there's a glimmer of light that will be activated within us at some point if we are able to feel it and sense it, if we have the courage to follow, to listen, to go deeper. And it's not going to be activated in everyone right now in this current timeline, this current trajectory and lifetime and timeline. Yeah, it won't, it just won't. So for some of us, it has been, and we followed it. And then from that point onwards, it's up to us, and it's our responsibility to then be able to unravel all of the ignorance and indoctrination. So from that point, we have to do the work. And a lot of people will agree that once you have seen it, this little glimmer, there's no going back. And it's the glimmer, but it's also the darkness. You know, it's difficult to just go back to ignorance. But listen, not everyone will have this happening in their life. So a lot of us are still living in ignorance and in indoctrination. And this isn't to speak and belittle anyone at all in any way. This is just the reality as I see it right now that is taking place on this planet. And not everyone is going to do that journey. You know, who knows when they're going to start. Sometimes the spark would just go boom and then they're on it now, and it might have happened to you 30 years prior, you know. So that's just how it goes. So ultimately, you know, people are born into their belief systems. A lot of people don't come into the state of self-actualization, you know, individuation process that Carl Jung speaks about. And because of that, they are acting from these unconscious, subconscious, you know, indoctrinated and ignorant beliefs. And that's it. So the understanding really is to see that and to honor the other person's soul evolution journey, you know? Because at the end of the day, who are we to interrupt with their process? Do you know? Who are we to tell them this and that and that and this? You know, who are we? I mean this in a like controlling way. So again, this whole thing of moving away from cancel culture is really being able to honor people on their process, on their path, on their stage of the journey, even if they haven't yet woken up to their spiritual nature, even if they haven't yet realized what's happening in the world. At the moment, again, there is a level of, and that is the oneness, being able to see the wider picture, you know? So there's different sides to it. There are different sides that we can, so in that way, when we do that, we can encompass and embody this unity, even if we have to walk away from them in our lives, you know what I mean? So the cancelling isn't really there, because sometimes we do need to walk away from people. Sometimes it doesn't serve us, you know, sometimes we don't want to be the victim of abuse. So that is literally just how it works. And then what I wanted to say about that as well is that, yeah, just honoring other people's process and other people's journey is very, very powerful, and it's very magical. And it is the way that we can move away from this whole idea and concept of cancelling. And then on the other side, and the flip side of it as well, is sometimes if we have a lot of knowledge and information, we can still go around cancelling people. And basically doing it from like the other side of the spectrum, where we think that both of the sides think that they know more than the other in a way. But then obviously, I guess, yeah, there's one place where you're coming from ignorance in a way, in this indoctrination. But then another place is when you're coming from, like, you've seen a lot. It might not even be in an egotistical way of expression, but if you've seen a lot, and then you can still be going around cancelling and telling people like they shouldn't be doing things, and disagreeing with them, and the whole concept of disagreeing with someone, you know, is fine. What I always think is that, you know, we don't need to agree on everything, and we're not going to. I don't agree with everyone on everything, even my closest friends or people that I look up to or whatever. It's not really looking up to, it's more people that I admire and people that inspire me. So yeah, this is based in the old ideology. So again, what is it? Why do you feel the need to go and kind of try to create these situations where you are putting yourself forward to disagree with this person? And how can you come back into this heart-centered conversation, you know? And the other thing about all of this stuff is that we are all on our own journeys, and the process is completely infinite. Things are always changing, and there are so many things that we once did that at a later stage we realize, that's totally not the one anymore. And it's fine, it's part of the journey. But in a way, those things, those people, those books, those aspects of consciousness helped us. They helped us so much when they needed to. They helped us when we were at the beginning of our journey, you know. They freaking helped us. And then at a later stage, we realize, oh no, this person is like completely preaching about things that are not where I understand truth to be now. So then we just walk past it and we walk away. So in that way, what happens, that person who realizes that might come forward and speak and say, hey guys, this is where I am now. This is what I understand. And so then, again, there can be this cancelling, oh, but you're not allowed to think that, oh, no, but like, I don't agree with you, you know? And it's like, it's okay. You don't need to agree with me right now. You know, you don't need to have this understanding. This person who is just expressing that is just expressing their inner understanding of their realizations that they have come to. And that is also completely okay, you know? So I feel like the whole thing is multidimensional. The whole thing is, and someone might have come to the realization, you might not realize that that is real, and you don't actually agree with it, which is fine. At a later stage, you might come to realize, oh, there is truth in that. And luckily, you heard about it already, you know, because there are so many hijacks and distortions taking place now as well. So yeah, it's freaking true. So, and that's also fine. Like, that's also just part of the process and part of the journey. And you might never come to the realization, you might be like, this person is gone, you know. I mean, obviously, it doesn't really work like that, but, you know, I just don't agree with it. But it's not to create separation in our disagreements, you know. It's fine. We're not all going to have the same opinions. We're literally not all going to have the same structures. We have been through so many different things in our lives. Our whole upbringing has brought us all into these different conclusions and ways of being and interpreting the world. Obviously, everyone knows that since 2020, it's like you could be standing next to someone, you're living in a completely different reality. We've heard that, and we've heard all of that. And the reality, everyone is living in a different reality. You know, the reality is in the mind. So what are you doing to practice clearing your mind, you know? But I just find it really interesting, yeah, the whole cancelling thing, and there's so much of it in the spiritual community. And so this, in the spiritual community, it kind of works on the other way. It's not a traditional, like, oh, you know, you think that, how dare you? It's more subtle, and I feel like it works more in a way where you see people communicating from a space of, you know, this is not the truth, this is the truth. Literally, that's literally it. You know, with like complete traditional sayings, like, you know, we are all one. This is, you know, we are not all one. You know, when you start a sentence like that, that's just an example, by the way. But when you start a sentence like that, it's already creating division just with that sentence. You know what I mean? And again, this is why it comes back to our heart space. It comes back to communicating compassion and understanding. And these are the things which I feel like they're at the beginning. They are foundations. If you miss this part of it, then it's almost like the foundation isn't there, so you're spinning in different directions and getting lost in the separation and then in the duality. And the separation is huge because we can feel it between each other. We really can. And with all these things, if people have done you wrong, forgiveness is so important, and forgiveness in the different opinions and how they've spoken to you in conversations, and just, yeah, honoring that and just saying, oh, it's okay, like, I get it, and it's up to us to get it. We are the ones that have to get it, and that's it, you know. And if you don't have that foundation, and I really believe that this is a foundation. How am I communicating you? How am I meeting you right now in this space? If you don't have it, then yeah, it's going to take you spiraling into these different places, when ultimately the remembrance is literally to come back into unity, and into unity means back into love. And this whole idea of ascension and this transformation that's taking place in 5D and all this stuff, right? whatever words we want to use. Ultimately, it is back into this remembrance of us, remembrance of who we are. This, I like to call it the spiritual renaissance. This remembrance of our connection to source, to the earth, to everything in this cosmos, to all the species here, and then into love, and in order to get into this love, we have to embody it in our lives, in our conversations. We have to. There's no escaping that. There's no bypassing that. There is no, if you skip the level, you're skipping a fundamental aspect of who you are. Do you know what I mean? And ultimately, that's it. I remember hearing this phrase ages ago, and one of my friends, and it's obviously quite common, but he just said it, and I was like, this is so true. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be loved? And ultimately, that's just what it comes down to. When you're having these conversations, when someone doesn't agree with you, when you don't agree with someone else, how do you meet them in the conversation? Do you want to argue with them? Because if you're gonna argue with them, it's the whole concept of trying to be right, and that's where the cancel culture stems from. This concept of trying to be right, which is so ingrained in our ego. The biggest work that can do is on ourselves, because when we start to realize that we're not our ego, all of these patterns and behaviors just dismantle within us. That's just it. It starts to happen in our lives, in practically, very, very, very practically. And again, I always say the spiritual journey it's about being practical. It is practicality. That's what it is. It's not this fancy, lofty idea over there. Yes, a lot of it is magical and fantasy, and yes, it is. But it's also very grounded, and it's very real, and it's very here, and it's very now, and it's very walking on the earth, And they're both the same thing. It's not one or the other. It's not, So, yeah, how are you meeting that person in the conversation? Do you want to be right? Because, yeah, if you're coming from the place of wanting to be right, that's where the cancelling can come in. No, but I'm right. Again, you're right only from your perspective in that one room. But can you come outside and realize that all these other people are in all these other rooms? You know what I mean? And yeah, this is like one of the biggest ways that we can get over this cancel culture, and that is to stop wanting to prove other people wrong. Yeah, man, you heard that right here. Stop wanting to prove other people wrong. Stop serving your ego, and stop wanting to be right. Stop thinking you're so smart. That's it. And that's how it comes from all these different places. Yeah, you might be freaking smart, but you don't know what you don't know. Nobody knows everything. That's just the truth, And the levels where we are now, we are unraveling truth. We are unraveling the lies and the deceits and the broken history, hidden knowledge. We are unraveling that. So really come from a place of open-heartedness, embrace other people's opinions, listen, learn, And yeah, those things are ultimately, you can tell in a conversation with someone where they're coming from when they're coming at you wanting to be right. And obviously sometimes you challenge other people just from expressing yourself because it completely contradicts their worldview, and that's also the beginning of their awakening process, because sometimes that's what it takes, and then later the penny drops, and vice versa, and it happens. And again, it's not like one person is knows it all, because again, they know something in one specific space, and they might be on a different level to you in another space. This is it. It's like this whole multi-dimensional complex thing that just, we can't see the full picture just by looking at one angle. It doesn't work like that. And so if we can understand that, then we can zoom out and start to see all of the levels. And when you zoom out, you don't hold so strongly onto your opinions. You're able to stop talking and allow other people to talk, and you're able to listen, and you're able to not communicate in a way that's trying to prove the other person wrong. And a lot of the cancel culture conversations in all of the communities come from this place of, I'm trying to defeat you in this conversation, literally. And it just doesn't work like that. And one of the other things about that is when you are journeying through your path and on this great adventure, you start to learn that you begin to know things through experience. And so when that happens, that's like the most powerful place you can be, because nothing can beat it. And it's such a strong connection to your heart and to your intuition. When that happens, it doesn't matter what anybody else says. You have learnt it firsthand from your experience. So they can't knock you for anything, And yeah, of course, that might change at another later state, but there's this trust of your experience and of yourself and your journey, which is this responsibility. And when that happens, and because of that, then there's this allowance. It's like, okay, cool. Someone might disagree with that, fine, but like, let me be at my stage of my journey. You know what I mean? And that's really that's what it comes down to. Allowing everyone to be at their stage of their awakening. Let them. And another thing about the cancelling and the separation, being right versus feeling love, it's this restriction that we sometimes put ourselves in. It's like this fighting. It's like, are we creating more of that in our lives, or resistance? Because, that's not healthy. Or are we just opening ourselves up to flow? Other questions to be pondered, really. So yeah, the cancel culture thing, I feel like, dude, I think we're all over it by now, literally. And what I will say to anyone listening here is that if you're over it too, then really take a moment to reflect how or you might be perpetuating it in your own life. And one of the most powerful things, I believe, is taking responsibility in our conversations, because even if someone else is coming towards us wanting to be right, we have the power to transform that conversation to a different kind of conversation by the words that we speak that can come from a place of love. And they might squirm and squeal, and the ego is involved, and they're still trying, but we can always come from a place of stillness, not reacting to what they are saying, and from that place of compassion and understanding, And these are all things, it's like a workbook, we have to work through it. It's not a sentence, it's not a conversation, it's a feeling, it's an embodiment. It's this process that we're going through into feeling love, that it's all here, it comes here, it comes down to us. And it's such a real experience. So yeah, thank you for listening. It's something that I've been thinking about for a little while. So yeah, I feel like I can talk about so many different things. So let's see how that goes. And again, if you are looking for support on your journey of awakening, check out the online course, Awakening 101, a ninja's guide to navigating your spiritual awakening. Thank you.